First, there is, and it's really a clearly different expectations here, expectations regarding the control of coverage. Who should be in control of the coverage about science? And there, the case is that both sides want control. So the journalist, of course, will expect that he or she is the author of an article or a media story and should have the right to include what he or she thinks appropriate to be in it. However, scientists want to have a say in how the article or the media story is made, and that can take different forms. It can take the form that the scientist expects an article to be to be given to check it before publication, or in other ways getting some control over it. And of course, a typical journalist would consider that an attempt of censorship and would be clear cut against it. And that is what we find. The second thing where, the second dimension where there are discrepant expectations is that scientists sometimes think that scientific communication norms should be applied to public communication. That is, for example, matter-of-factly reporting, yeah? While journalists, of course, want to evoke emotions, want to raise sensations, and so on and so forth. The scientists here are more against that, the journalistic form of coverage than journalists, of course. Then the third dimension is instrumentalization of journalism by science. That means scientists very often want journalism to support their goals. Scientists think they are doing a very good job for society. I mean, in a way they are doing as a system, but nevertheless there's a lot of things that you can criticize as a journalist within science. But still, the general expectation by scientists is that journalism should support them and their goals. And scientists and journalists do not completely disagree, but they are not as positive against this expectation as scientists are. Then is a very interesting thing. Journalists require something like a critique and control function. They think it is their job as a fourth estate to check the behavior of those in power. And of course, knowledge is power. Science also has power. And so science journalists think, many science journalists think that it is their job also to have a critical eye on science and to uncover cases of fraud, misconduct, and so on and so forth. And of course, this is agreed more by journalists than by scientists. However, it is surprisingly strong support also by scientists. I will come to that when I show you an example. So scientists do accept, they say, at least we have to say, they accept this critique function. Okay. And finally, the relation to the media audience seems to be different. There seem to be different expectations. Scientists, more than journalists, expect this relationship with the public, with the general audience, to be paternalistic. That means teaching, educating them, rather than informing them. So if there is a term teaching education in an item, that usually finds more agreement with a scientist than with journalists. If the term is informing the audience, it's more agreement with journalists than with scientists. Let me give you, well, I cannot show all the 70 items. I've selected 5 items illustrating these 5 dimensions. So the first item here is journalists should allow interview partners to check the article prior to publication. And the bars show agreement and disagreement. And as you can see, the journalists disagree clearly with that item, and the scientists quite strongly agree to that item. It's a very strong expectation by scientists that they should be able to check the articles. This can be interpreted in 2 ways. It can be interpreted as a kind of quality control. I mean, then even journalists, science journalists, have some understanding of that demand, and they very often, in practice, they very often give the articles to scientists and have them check them, especially the quotes. But it can also be interpreted as a kind of, well, making sure that the coverage is in my interest, as a kind of strategic approach, and then it is of course not accepted by journalists at all. However, all our studies show there is a big discrepancy regarding the demanded control over coverage. The second item here is in an interview, experts should focus on facts and avoid any evaluations. Based on value-free science, this concept of science, we would expect scientists to reject the ideas that they should give evaluation and so on. Actually, they refuse a little, but the experts we interviewed here were not completely against it. It's close to, well, mixed. Yeah? But journalists clearly reject the idea that scientists should limit their statements to facts. They expect scientists to evaluate things and to make proposals for action. The third item is media should accept expert authority and support experts in their efforts to popularize their findings. This is accepted by scientists and rejected by journalists, although there's not very big this difference. I mean, you could expect journalists to be more against this. But science journalists obviously have some positive attitude towards science, and they are not wanting to apply, it's an average of course, apply a total critical perspective to science. Usually they like science and they want to support science, but of course they also want to address the bad things in science that are also there. The fourth item is journalists should accept expert statements rather than questioning them. That is the critique function. And here we find disagreement with the statement in both groups. That is, at least verbally, even the scientists say, well, yes, it is okay if we are challenged by journalists. And we can discuss why this is the case. It may be based on a very positive account of organized skepticism within science. So if we look at Merton's norms of science, organized skepticism, being critical towards what colleagues have done, what I myself have done, is a very positive thing. And they may disagree with that item based on exactly that positive evaluation of skepticism, criticism within science. It may also be the consequence of the political culture in which scientists and journalists live, where the press as a fourth estate is well accepted. This is a standard assumption in Western societies that this is the role of the press. But it could also be that it's simply social desirability bias, that they want to appear to apply to that norm, but in concrete situations it would be completely different. We can assume that this is the case. And finally, regarding the paternalism, the media should educate the public in order to promote risk-avoiding behavior. The context of the study was risk problems. And we have more agreement here by scientists and a mixed attitude with respect to journalists. These items are not the only ones, so I just selected them to illustrate. The pattern I showed before is confirmed by several items which are consistent in these respects. Okay, so we have found theoretical reasons to expect big problems in the relationship of scientists and journalists. We have found empirical evidence of discrepant expectations, and now we have done several studies about actual interactions and satisfaction with these interactions. the recent study we did, and that was published by Science, was that we looked at biomedical researchers in 5 countries, in Germany, France, UK, United States, and Japan. And we asked exactly the same question. So we translated the questionnaire. It was a written questionnaire, so it was a mail survey, so we sent the questionnaire to the researchers. And what we found was, in general, a rather big similarity between the 5 countries. I mean, we did know a little about United States and UK. We did know a little about Germany and less so about France. But we did know nothing about Japan. But still, Japan, which is a very different culture with respect to science communication, seems to be quite similar to United States and Germany, with some exceptions.